Hello, welcome to our webinar this afternoon, Machine Learning, How to Unlock Your Most Effective Customer Experience Yet. During the next 20 minutes, we will show you how machine learning can connect to your customer data pools within your organization, allowing you to deliver an effective omni-channel customer care infrastructure. We will then give you a brief demonstration of our virtual agent in action. Please feel free to submit any questions using the question and answer panel in your chat screen. Alan and our team of experts will then answer these at the end of the session. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Alan Cheslow. Alan has over 2 decades of experience delivering successful projects for companies such as Microsoft and Intel. He's currently the virtual agent specialist at WDS, working with Xerox Innovation. Alan's mission is to bring customer care excellence to life. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Jill, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for calling in. Before we start, I want to say a few words about WDS for anyone who may not be familiar with who we are. WDS was founded in the UK in 1995, and we were acquired by Xerox in 2012. And we work very closely with scientists and research centers from Xerox throughout the world, and with PARC in Palo Alto. Some of you may know PARC as having been credited with technology such as the invention of laser printing, Ethernet networking, the modern PC and graphical user interface, object-oriented programming. And today, these scientists are conducting really leading-edge research into machine learning and natural language processing, which we're using to build state-of-the-art solutions for customer care. We also benefit from Xerox's experience running contact centers for hundreds of major organizations throughout the world. Xerox actually employs over 50,000 agents in more than 105 locations globally. And we're able to leverage and learn from that experience to bring the world of customer care into what we call the second machine age. So the first machine age was really about overcoming the limitations of physical muscle. And if you take the example of the automotive production line, it really didn't change during the first half of the last century, with humans manning the production line to assemble vehicles manually. And what we saw towards the end of the century was the introduction of automation via robotics starting to streamline manufacturing. And what we're now in is the second machine age. Now we're augmenting cognitive power and augmenting the human brain. As you can see, the care industry hasn't changed much over the last 50 years. There's still essentially people sitting in front of keyboards and wearing headphones. But what we're seeing now is an era where more and more interactions between a brand and its customers are going to be managed by a machine through computing power. And in fact, this year represents a tipping point where more care transactions will be processed in digital channels, such as web-based self-service, than in traditional voice channels. With the clients that we work with and those who we survey, we've seen non-voice interactions increase consistently from about 25% in 2012. And sometimes toward the end of this year, we expect that to grow to half of all care transactions. Now, looking out farther, Gartner are predicting that by 2020, customers will manage 85% of their relationship with an enterprise without interacting with a human. And what this represents is the potential for a win-win situation for the industry and end users. We've seen the trend towards self-service increasing, and this is in line with the preference for end users to self-serve. And the fact that the industry as a whole has recognized that self-service support is up to 98% more cost-effective than a voice-based interaction. So why are consumers still calling contact centers to solve their problems? And why are so many users experiencing failed self-service interactions? Well, our view is that many of the first-generation tools just aren't equipped for the next phase of digital care. In particular, many self-service solutions work in a silo, which isn't connected to the rest of the organization. And they aren't taking advantage of all of the great analytics that we believe are critical to delivering the best digital care experience. Through auditing care environments over many years, WDS has identified 4 key reasons why digital care strategies are failing customers and not meeting the ROI that enterprises expect from their investments in self-service solutions. First, it's often too hard to find the answer. It might be buried on a website 3 to 4 pages deep where customers can't find it. Or there's no answer to the problem. When we conduct audits into self-service solutions, we often find that content has been generated months in advance of product launch, for example. And afterwards, the content isn't updated to reflect actual real-world customer issues that are driving calls into the contact center. Also, they're often too impersonal. Users feel they're being forced down a fixed route, such as a decision tree, or being presented with very generic information, which doesn't relate specifically enough to their issue. And that makes it more difficult for them to solve their problem. And lastly, customers visiting digital channels expect an immediate response. And when they don't get it, and even in a best case scenario, when they're referred to a contact center for help, the immediacy drops and the customer effort increases, and that damages the customer satisfaction. And there's a hidden cost to all of this, which we call the fallback paradox. So digital care channels are solving at best about 70% of interaction. So let's take a look at what happens to the other 30%. Well, about half of those are calling a contact center to get more help. So the very tools that are being deployed to deflect calls may actually be contributing to call volume. And we estimate through the audit work that we've done that up to 20% of contact center volume is there because of the failure of digital solutions that have been put in place. And this often remains invisible to care organizations. Unless a brand actually asks their customers, did you try and solve your problem through a self-care tool first before calling, they simply don't know how much volume is there as a result of the failed self-service interaction. Addressing this paradox presents a huge opportunity not only to reduce contact center costs, but also to improve the digital customer experience. So what's the cost of these failed self-service interactions? As I mentioned, every year WDS conducts an audit that looks at the impact of care on customer loyalty and brand perception. And the most recent survey showed pretty interesting data, showed the NPS based on the number of interactions over a 6-month period. And this was an audit that was done with 4,000 mobile customers in the US and Europe. And it revealed that the baseline NPS score was plus 11, which isn't particularly high compared to other industries. So you can see that a single care transaction is relatively benign in terms of the impact to NPS. But once you go over that, NPS really falls off a cliff down to minus 35 for customers who have to interact 3 or more times over a 6-month period. And the same is true with satisfaction. CSAT remains relatively stable with a single care interaction, but quickly drops off as the number of interactions increase. So you might ask, what does the satisfaction of customers mean in terms of your brand? Well, one way to measure that is to look at how likely the customer is to switch, how likely they are to churn. And you can see that once you get into multiple care interactions, the risk of churn increases significantly, going up to 64% chance after 3 or more support interactions. So how do we prevent this? Well, paradoxically, the ability to deliver a winning digital care strategy actually starts in the contact center. If you think about the terabytes of data that are flowing through contact centers every year, it's one of the best places to go to get detailed information about interactions with your customers. And it can become the knowledge hub which drives your entire digital care strategy. If you think about the types of knowledge that exist in the contact center that would be valuable in developing solutions in digital channels, you have customer context about your customers, the plans they're on, the devices they're using, that sort of thing, the symptoms that they're articulating to agents, the causes of their problems, and the solutions that agents are offering to resolve their symptoms, and operational metrics for different types of calls. Now, all of this data is often just used for operational reporting. But our view is that the companies who understand and can harness the richness of this data are the ones who will be most likely to improve the performance of their capabilities. And this all starts by enabling the machine to learn from the experts. So if you think about the interaction between a contact center agent and a customer, the agent starts by deciphering the customer's symptoms, moving from something ambiguous to something clearly understood. And the agent troubleshoots these symptoms to understand the actual causes and then provides the most appropriate solution for the customer, after which they confirm the customer's issue has been resolved. We have developed technology which can listen to and learn from these interactions and learn the connections between certain symptoms and specific root causes, the sort of thing that an experienced contact center agent would have learned and be delivering consistently day to day, right down to the best knowledge asset that the agent used to address the customer's issue. So when the machine sees the same issue via other channels, such as digital or retail, it can pull from this historical information, much like a real agent would. It's seen the same issue thousands of times before in your contact center, and it knows that if it uses this learned information and the associated knowledge assets, it has an extremely high probability of solving the customer's issue. So the knowledge starts flowing freely between your contact center and your digital environments. If you think about many of the self-service solutions available today, including virtual agents, they're often nothing more than a window into a flat database of knowledge using simple keyword matching or rudimentary decision trees. And these are really no longer enough. They lack the capability of a human agent to accurately diagnose the customer's issue and serve up a solution which, with a high degree of confidence, will solve the underlying problem. So digital channels need the ability to draw on the latest data, understand how to solve the latest issues, and this can only be achieved by harnessing the data in your organization and putting it to use. So based on that approach, WDS have built a virtual agent that constantly learns about your customers to ensure that every interaction is better than the last. I'd like to show you a demo of the WDS virtual agent now so you can see how it provides a better experience. And before I jump right into the virtual agent itself, I wanted to show you a little bit about how the training for the virtual agent takes place. And we have a tool which we deploy into a contact center that is used to listen to these interactions between customers and human agents to learn, as I said, about how agents are diagnosing problems and providing the right solution to customers. Now, all of this technology is relevant in really any industry, any domain, any scenario. And for this example, I'm going to show you what it might look like for a mobile or telecom industry, customers that might have problems with a mobile device. The way this works essentially is that when a customer calls in with a problem, an agent would use this tool to notate how they address that customer's problem. So let's say someone calls in because they can't connect to the internet. So the agent would simply type in the problem the customer was having. I can't connect to the internet. And this will then allow the system to understand this problem. And you can see that the system has already gone through some training. So it's already suggesting a question that the agent could ask the customer in order to help troubleshoot the problem. Now, the agent could take this question, or if they know a better question to ask, they could type in here whatever the question happens to be. Is your mobile data connection switched on? And by going through this process, teach the system to understand how the human agent understood the problem, diagnosed it, and provided the right solution. So that's how the system is trained. Now, the really great thing about the underlying platform that we've provided is that it works across channels. So not only do we use this for our virtual agent product for self-service channels, but once human agents have trained the system, it can also be used to help other agents within a call center. So just very quickly, I'll show you we have this tool called Agent IQ, which could help perhaps a new agent who wasn't as familiar with how to troubleshoot these problems with guidance on how to go through asking questions to understand and troubleshoot the issue and provide the right solution. So this is a tool that agents would use in the call center. Now, what we really want to look at is how an end user would be able to use the same training, the same data to provide a self-service experience. So consistent with this example scenario of a mobile or telecom company providing support for mobile devices, we can take a look at how the virtual agent would work on a support site for mobile devices. Now, again, this is just one example. The user interface here can be completely customized and branded. It can actually be optimized for mobile devices as well. So if I were to actually scale this down to the size of a mobile device, you can see here that now we've used responsive design to optimize the virtual agent for that type of experience with a small screen. So now we're at the bottom here. We can open it up and we can have a conversation just as you would with, say, an SMS application or that sort of thing. But I'm going to open this back up to the full PC experience so you can get a better view of how this works. And I'm going to go ahead and ask the same problem that I had before. I'm having a problem connecting my device to the internet, so I'll simply type in, I can't connect to the internet. Now, the system is going to go and take a look at all of the conversations that it's seen before where customers had a similar problem, whether they've called into a contact center or whether they've used the self-service tool before. And it's going to determine how to solve that customer's problem. Now, a couple things that are important to realize here is, first of all, this isn't just going through a fixed decision tree. So this isn't a scripted process where it's the same every time. This is actually a dynamic conversation that's always going to provide the best experience based on what the system has learned from the past. The other thing to note here is that it may not always just jump directly to providing a solution. It's not just doing a simple keyword search and returning a list of results that the user has to sort through. It's going to ask these clarifying questions if it needs to in order to raise its confidence in understanding what the root cause of the problem is. So at this point, it's asking, are you using Wi-Fi to connect, as one of these clarifying questions. And I can say, no, I'm not. So now it's going to have a little bit more information about what the problem is. There could be, dozens or hundreds of reasons why I can't connect to the internet, and it's going to try and help me find the right one. So now it's going to ask what device I'm using. So this is an example of how we can use user context to provide a more personalized experience. If we were a real mobile or telecom company, we'd probably have a back-end system where we would actually look up the user's device from their telephone number or their user credentials, and we would automate the process of determining this user context. For this example, I'm just going to type in my device. So you can see here, I'll just select it from a list, which is another way of providing more context about me so that the system can provide a more personalized response. Now, see, it's coming back with another clarifying question here, and each time it's doing this, it's becoming more and more confident in pinpointing exactly what my problem is. So now it's asking, are my APN settings correct? Now, I can answer this if I know how, but most likely a lot of the users won't know what APN settings are or how to check that. So we have this option to give users additional guidance on how to check on that and go through this troubleshooting process. Since the virtual agent is integrated into the underlying website, it can actually take me directly to the right resource on the website where I can get information about how to check the setting. So in this case, we're using additional simulation technology from WGS to give me a real look into my actual device, because I told the system what device I'm using, and so now I can step through here and see exactly what I need to do in order to check how to answer this question. So I can go through this and determine that my settings actually are correct, and give that information to the system. You can see here it's thinking again, and now it's asking, is my data allowance used up? So this time, if I ask for help checking that, you can see that in addition to linking to external resources, the system can also provide guidance in line as part of the conversation. So here it's just telling me to enter this, it's called a short code, into my device. So it's not actually making a phone call, it's just a way of accessing some diagnostic information on the device. So this is common with prepaid plans on phones to be able to check your data allowance. I would enter this in, and after doing so, I could determine that my data allowance actually is used up. And you'll see that having done that, now the system was able to determine that that was actually the root cause of my problem. So I've exceeded my mobile data allowance, and it's going to give me directions on how to fix this. The fix could be, again, a link to another page on the website, or it could be a link that kicks off some business process to automate this for me. But in this case, we're just giving the instructions in line here, which is to enter another shortcut in my phone to increase my data allowance. Now, if this actually didn't solve my problem, I could answer no here, and the system would then look back at other interactions it's had and offer another solution. And if there was actually a better solution, then it would learn from that, and next time it may offer the other solution instead of this one. In the rare case that the system just can't help me at all, then we can always hand over to a live human agent, and I could just continue the chat conversation with a human agent who might be able to help me further. But in this case, we'll say that this actually did help or did solve my problem. So I will answer yes here. And the system will then use that to learn about the correlation between the problem that I had, the various troubleshooting steps that we went through to understand the symptoms that I was having, and the best solution for me. So the next time that a customer has a similar problem, it will have a better understanding about that correlation, and it may not have to ask as many clarifying questions, may be able to jump straight to the solution. And I can actually show you a little bit about what that looks like. So if I were to ask another question where the system has actually had more experience seeing the correlation between a problem and a solution, well, we'll just take a look at how that works. So let's say I am having problems sending text messages. So I can say, I can't send an SMS. And in this case, the system had seen users with this problem before, and it had seen that every time customer had this problem before, the problem was that they had their SMS settings misconfigured. So in this case, it's the SMS service number, or the SMSC, was incorrect. And so it's confident enough that my problem is also that I had this setting misconfigured, that it's able to offer the solution without having to ask all of the clarifying questions, because it's learned that correlation. So I can now click on this link, and the system will take me to, again, the particular page on the site where I can see my particular device, and I can then walk through the process of updating this setting. And again, it will ask whether this had solved my problem or not, and it did, so I can say yes, thank you, and it will then learn from that again. So that's how the system learns from real interactions between customers in a call center. That's how the system learns over time to optimize its understanding of the correlation between certain problems, symptoms, root causes, and solutions, so that over time it gets better and better at providing the best experience for customers and getting them to the right answer for their particular problem. Now, as this happens, we're capturing all of this data, and we use it to train the system, but we also use it to provide analytics back to Care Manager to understand the interactions that customers are having with their brand. So this is what we call the Insight Dashboard, which provides a real-time view into all of these conversations that are happening across channels. And again, I mentioned that the underlying learning engine can help agents in the call center as well as end users through the self-service channel. And so we could look at those individually if we wanted to break those down. But the really useful thing here is to look at both channels together. We can look at them for different periods of time here and see the total number of conversations that have gone through the system and the percentage of those that have resulted in successful solutions. And then we can break those down into various categories. Since for this example, we're looking at an example mobile support site, we can break these down to look at particular mobile devices if we wanted to. And what we're seeing are the top symptoms that have been reported. And we can see our problem of being unable to access the internet was a top call driver here. And we can also see highlighted here the items that are increasing in frequency the fastest. So this is a really great way in real time to get a leading indicator into new issues that may have been unanticipated, which are cropping up. And that can help the brand understand if maybe there's a problem with their product or service that needs to be addressed in order to prevent those problems. It can also help to make sure that the right support content is available to address them as well. Now, we can also see the root causes that are being solved and the top solutions that are being served. And again, we highlight the items that are increasing in frequency the fastest, and this is all being updated in real time. So this is how we get a view into all of the data that we're collecting, and all of that data, again, is being used to continue to train the system so that it learns the most efficient way to solve customers' problems. So that wraps up my demo. We have time for some questions at this point in time, and I have some colleagues of mine who are here to join me, Greg Hepworth and Dave Butt, who are product owners for our virtual agent solution and our back-end machine learning platform, as well as Martin Saberton, who is a product manager for our contact center tools. And I will hand it back to Jill to explain the process of our question and answers.
Hello, everybody. Yes, if you use your chat box or the Q&A section, you should be able to pose some questions. We've had a couple come through during the presentation, so I will just pose the first one. Alan, I'll pose them all to you, and then if there's anything that you would like to pass on to Greg or David, please do so. So the first one, how is your virtual agent different from others in the marketplace today?
Sure. So a number of things. First is the fact that it's driven by this core machine learning platform. So a lot of other self-service solutions will be based on fixed decision trees. They require all of the paths or the flows to be known and programmed ahead of time, and they don't really adapt as conditions change. So that's the first, is that we use this machine learning platform, which is constantly learning about interactions with customers and adapting to that. Second is we have this ability to ask these clarifying questions. So rather than just answering a question with a best guess and often getting it wrong or having to redirect the user to a different channel, we're able to ask questions where needed in order to raise the system's confidence until it knows exactly what the root cause of the problem is. We also have the ability for the system to work across channels. So the self-service conversations benefit from what the system has learned between conversations between customers and the contact center, and vice versa. So if there's a new agent in a contact center, they'll benefit from what the system has learned watching conversations between other agents and also between customers and the self-service tool. And then lastly, I would say is the ability to use user context. So again, we will automate wherever possible integration with backend systems so that we can determine more information about users and provide a more personalized experience with them. Or as I showed in the example, just very simply allowing users to enter more information themselves.
Thank you, Alan. I've had another one come through here. The question is, where does the content supporting the self-service interface come from?
Great question. So we can use existing content. If the customer has an existing knowledge system that they're using, then we can leverage that. We can use that. As you saw, where there is information on a website, the virtual agent can just link to that, or we can pull it into the tool. We also have a team of analysts that can create new knowledge where it's needed and populate that into the system as well.
Okay, and there's another one here. Where do you see this technology going to next?
Yeah, great. So, right now, as you've seen, we're really focusing on chat-based interactions through a website or through a mobile device. And we're working on expanding the number of channels through which customers can interact with the system. So you can imagine that over time, you might be able to converse with the system through voice, for example, using speech recognition and generation, or through social channels, such as being able to pick up conversations on Twitter or SMS or something like that. So there's some pretty exciting developments that we have on our roadmap to work on.
Okay, there's another one here. It says, is the analytics or insight dashboard included as a standard element of virtual agent or agent IQ?
Yeah, so the insight dashboard that I show, which is just part of the analytics that we provide, is a standard part of the underlying platform, which drives both virtual agent and the Agent IQ products. So that is included in those.
Okay, and the second part of that question, and are Agent IQ and virtual agent coupled together, or are they available separately?
Yeah, great question. So both products definitely benefit from both being used because that just provides more data into the system, and it allows the system to accelerate its learning by seeing more conversations across more channels. Having said that, it's not required that both are used at the same time. So either one could be used on its own, and the system will still be able to learn from interactions that it sees on that particular channel.
They're still coming. Here we go. There's another one here. It says, what happens if the virtual agent can't answer a question?
Yep, great question. So if the system it goes through all of its solutions, or it becomes not confident enough in being able to provide a solution, or eventually we'll get to the point where we can just determine that the customer is becoming frustrated. For any reason, if we determine that the virtual agent isn't able to best address the customer's needs anymore, then we can do a warm handover to a human agent. So if there is, for instance, like a chat platform available where there are human agents being able to take chat conversations, then we can pass the entire conversation that the customer has had with the virtual agent so far to the human agent and allow them to pick it up from there.
Thank you. Sorry. And a final question here is, can I use my own avatar?
Yep, absolutely. So everything that I showed today was just an example of how the virtual agent might look for one particular type of industry, type of company. But as I mentioned, the technology itself works across industries, across scenarios, across domains, and the user interface can be completely customized, including the avatar itself. The avatar, you may have noticed, can be animated to represent different states that the system is in, to give the user an indication of whether it's thinking or whether it's waiting for a response from the user. And each of those states that the avatar is in can be customized. You could have a figure of a human face if you wanted, or whatever represents the brand of the company.
Okay, and another one here. Can I use Agent IQ on its own without the virtual agent? I think we did that one.
Yeah, I think we said that it can. So Agent IQ and virtual agent benefit from both being used together, but they can be used separately as well.
Okay. Here's another one. We went over the toolset training process. How long does this take, and who does the training?
Yep, so how long does it take really depends on the type of call drivers, and we will initiate deployment by doing an audit of an existing care operation to understand what kind of calls a contact center is taking, or what kind of problems customers are having. We'll take a look at existing knowledge that can be used, and by doing that, we'll be able to determine the types of problems that we want to automate and the amount of time that it will take to train the system to do that. So the most common scenario is that we'll take just a few agents that may be taking calls already, and in addition to having them handle customer calls, they'll use our tool that I showed in the very beginning, the Intelligence Hub, which allows them to notate the problems that customers are having and the ways that they're solving the problem, and the content that they're providing to customers, and then that's how the system learns about the customer problems and the solutions to them.
Okay, thank you. And I think this one's along the same vein. If the Agent IQ is not employed, where would the virtual agent get its initial knowledge from? So does it work with other people's systems?
Yeah, so we would still use that Intelligence Hub tool that I showed at the very beginning to notate existing problems that customers are having, any questions that are needed to diagnose the root cause of their question or problem, and the solution to their problems. The Agent IQ tool then is used as a way to help other agents in a call center troubleshoot customer problems. So that's really more for less experienced agents, especially in environments where there's a lot of agent turnover. You may have new agents who aren't as familiar with how to solve a particular customer problem. And so the Agent IQ tool can then be used to guide them in how to solve that. Now, as part of the process of having agents use that tool, the system will continue to get trained about which solutions were the most effective ones for customer problems. But the initial training happens through our Intelligence Hub tool.
Thank you, Alan. I think that is all the questions for now. Has anybody got anything else they need to ask? Obviously, Alan's details are on the screen here, and also there is a generic email box there that if you want to ask and have a look. If anybody wants to know any more, please contact us and we can talk through this in more detail. I'm aware that we haven't gone into any technical details here, but please do contact us and we can give you any more information. So I think we haven't any more questions coming through. So at that point, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out to join us today, and thank you very much to Alan for a very enjoyable presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you everyone for joining. Bye.